What's good, my dear language learning masters? And welcome to a new episode of the Language Input Podcast, in which, as usual, I'm going to talk about different topics related to language learning with the main goal of helping you understand that we can all learn any language when you're in the process every step of the way. I'm totally convinced, and I won't get tired of repeating it and of trying to talk about it in different ways so I can really convince you that that's actually the case. All right. So with that being said, let's get into today's episode. Let's go. And today I want to talk about a really useful resource, or I might call it concept, okay, which is the physical acquisition of language. And I'll explain what I mean in a moment, okay? But what I want to talk about is about what it is, all right? About why I think it's important when it comes to learning a language, and different resources or activities that you can use in order to help you keep learning the language, as I said. And resources and activities that I use myself, that I've used in the past, and that have helped me tremendously when it comes to acquiring a new language, all right? So when I'm talking about the physical acquisition of the language, what I really mean is listening to our target language in a way that involves physical movement. So it's easier for us to connect the actual sounds, words, phrases we're listening to their meaning in the physical world. To put it into words, all right? So to give you an example, there's a language teaching method called TPR, which stands for total physical response, which involves learning language through commands, which just the teacher would just say jump, and the student jumps, scream, and the student screams, or move to the left, and the student moves to the left, etc. Right? And so the idea is, like I said, that because you're physically performing the action, first of all, the teacher is going to understand, the teacher is going to see if you understand what he or she said, all right, because of you performing the right move, okay? And then it's really going to help you acquire that specific word, phrase, or sentence, like I said. So whatever the command, whether it's jump or move to the left or whatever it is, it's going to be way easier for you to remember it after you actually physically perform the action, all right? The only problem about the method itself is that, it only focuses on commands, so it's a little bit limited when it comes to the actual use of the language in real life. Like commands are just a tiny part of the entire language scope, right? So that's the one negative about it, right? But I believe there are certain real life activities that we can, or resources that we can use in order to physically acquire the language in the same way that I just explained, that are probably a little bit richer in terms of the amount of the language that they use, all right? They don't just stick to commands, but they actually use other parts of the language, so it's way richer in that regard, like I said. And I've talked about some of them before in this podcast, all right? And you probably already know, but one of them is sports. And when I'm talking about sports, I'm talking about both when you're the person actually exercising, right? Or playing or whatever it is, but also when you're watching them, on television, YouTube, or whatever, right? And ideally, probably the one the one idea that's probably going to help you the most is when you actually perform those actions. So when you're the one playing, okay? Because you're going to be listening to specific words, commands, sentences, etc., and performing the action at the same time, or seeing someone else perform the action on the pitch or the court or whatever it is. That's really going to help you understand what it means, right? And to give you an example, I remember when I played football, European football, soccer, okay, in Poland for the first time, I didn't know the vocabulary used in the pitch, and I really didn't speak the language at that time. So I was really lost the first time around, to be honest. Like I didn't really know how to ask for the ball and those things. But really quickly, just to give you an example, I didn't know the vocabulary, but when I would get the ball from a teammate and I had an opponent right behind me, they would shout "Washai," and I didn't know what that word meant at that time. But because of the context and the physical part of it, I right away realized that specific word meant "watch out" or "man on," and that was the idea, right? And that works for many other expressions and commands, but also when you're at halftime or in a timeout, whatever the sport, and your teammates are explaining the play or trying to help you, or you're just talking about a specific play that happened in the first half, or you're talking about possible solutions for the second half. If a specific player does that, you're gonna counteract with this move or whatever it is. So it's like whether you're actually living in the moment or talking about the past, first half in this context, or the future, second half, you're actually either performing the move yourself or picturing the action in your head, right, or remembering an action. So in all cases, there's that physical component of it that's really going to help you understand the concept or understand what your teammate is talking about, right? And I think that's just a tremendous resource for language learning, because it's like without the actual physical move, you would need to listen to that many times in order to actually acquire it, as opposed to how quick it is when you perform the move yourself or you see it happen on television or from a teammate, right? So it's like absolutely tremendous. And like I said, it works when you're the one playing, right? But it also works when you're watching a sport event in television, right? Because usually there's a commentator or a couple of commentators explaining the action, right? And while they're talking, the players are actually performing that specific move on the pitch, on the court, whatever it is. So even though you don't know what they're talking about beforehand, you're actually going to understand it because you see the actual move at the same time, right? And to give you an example, if I'm watching an NBA game, I'm watching basketball, and I don't know what a dunk is or what dunk means, but if the commentator says LeBron James dunks the basketball, and I actually see LeBron James dunk the basketball at the same time, right away, I've acquired that word because it's so much easier to remember because of the context, right? So that's why sports are tremendously helpful in order to help you physically acquire the language, right? And another idea and another resource that I already talked about on this podcast is board games, right? Or any type of game in general, but when it comes to board games, they also have that physical component because, if you, whether that's a friend or a family member, whoever that is, he or she is explaining, okay, so I'm going to draw a card now, and you actually see that person draw a card, right? So even if you didn't know what that sentence meant, because of the action that goes along with it, you're going to understand what it means, right? And that's incredible, right? Because you're, thanks to that physical movement, thanks to that context, you're going to understand new words or new phrases, sentences that you didn't know before, right? Like right away. So, that person might be talking about, so I'm going to draw a card and he or she draws a card, right? Or now I'm going to move this meeple over to the left of the board because, for whatever the reason, right? I'm just making things up. But they also have that physical component that really helps you understand what's going on, right? And like I said with sports, it's probably better when you're playing the games. But if you're interested, you can also watch them online on YouTube or whatever, right? And once again, in that sense, I'm thinking about another resource, and any type of class that involves movement, like a yoga class or dance class or martial arts class or or a gym class, whatever it is. Again, whether you're actually performing the action or watching it, that physical part of it, that move, that specific action is really going to help you understand what the message is, what the instructor, the teacher is talking about, right? So that's another activity that can really help you out when it comes to acquiring the language, the natural way, of course. Another research that I'm thinking of is cooking. But not cooking yourself on this case, but if you have someone cooking in your house or whatever and explaining what he or she is doing to you, perfect. But also I'm talking about, watching like YouTube videos about cooking, for example, because once again, they have that physical component. The cook is explaining what he or she is doing, right? So right now I'm gonna chop the onions, right? And you actually see the action at the same time. And now I'm gonna boil water to whatever. And now I'm gonna turn on the oven to 180 degrees. Whatever it is. And the cook is actually performing the action at the same time. So you get the point, right? Like any activity, resource, sport in which there's some physical movement involved is really going to help you learn the language probably in a more appropriate way and probably in a faster way, because without the move and without the context, you probably need to listen to a specific word or sentence many more times in order to acquire it than in this case with the physical action of the move that goes along with it, right? So again, whether we're talking about any of the activities that I mentioned before or any other similar one that you can come up with, I strongly recommend them because, I strongly recommend you give them a try because they're actually super useful when it comes to learning the language. And once again, it's all about finding the ones that, of course, first of all, the ones you're interested in, but then the ones I was going to say the ones you might be able to understand, but actually because of the nature of it, you might be able to understand specific resource that might be a little bit beyond your comprehension ability at that point because of the move, the physical move and the context. But in the end, it's all about giving it a try and seeing it for yourself, whether that's going to help you or not. But I believe it's a tremendously helpful resource in general. So yeah, that's it for today, everyone. And I thank you, as usual, for coming this far on this episode. Yeah, and I really appreciate it. And, as usual, whatever, if you have any question, suggestion, any opinion on today's episode, feel free to leave your comment down below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. I'll be more than happy to help you out if I can. I really, I'm grateful for your ideas for future episodes as well. So, don't be afraid to let me know, right? And yeah. So with that being said, I wish you a good day, whatever you might be, my dear language learning master. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Have a good day. Bye bye.